What's going on, everybody? Boris here at the Ecology Design Studio, bringing you episode 6 of this far-along series where we try to learn Java together. Lots of videos and improvements are coming up, folks, so subscribe to stay up to date, and also if you'd like and share this video to show your support for our series. It motivates me to keep going. Now, today's program uses a switch to examine several cases. It's an alternative to a nested if statement. The example program I referenced relies on an end-of-file indicator to terminate. They use Control-Z. Unfortunately, that will not work in NetBeans, but fortunately the solution is surprisingly simple. Now, in the interest of saving time, I've gone ahead and put a lot of the code up here, but don't get worried. It's literally the exact same thing as the fuel price program we wrote in the beginning in the first few episodes, with a few slight changes, those mostly being the names. That's pretty much all that's different. And also the variable declarations. Take a look, it says private int. So we've added the word private in front. And now if we go over here, we look at the variables, there's a little lock. I don't know if you can see that on your screen. There's a little lock indicator, and it says private integer a count. And it's saying javadoc not found. It will be. We haven't finished writing our code yet. Also, gradebook test has been written already. It's the same thing with a few slight changes. As you can see, it's calling 3 classes. It's referencing 3 classes instead of 2, I believe, is in the other one. And the names are different. That's it. Everything up to line 13 is the same. So it's going to be mygradebook.displayMessage.inputGrades and .displayGradeReport, which there's an error on line 17 because we have not written that class yet, but we will. Getting down here past our set and get methods, which we did previously, public void display message, that's the same as well, only the name is different. Actually, the name is the same too. Public void input grades, scanner input, new scanner, integer grade entered by user. Here's where you prompt them, and then they say type any character to add. That was the solution I found to the Control-Z issue. In order to terminate the program, we can't type Control-Z because NetBeans will not recognize that. We have to just type any character, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Here on line 54 is where we begin writing our new code. We're going to do a while loop, but with a twist. While input dot. Usually we write, the variable name and then less than or equals to, but now we're going to do input dot has next. And here's where I was confused for a while. This program was actually the most frustrating so far because I could not figure out how to terminate the program. Everything compiled properly and there were no errors in the code, but I could not terminate the program and get the results to execute and get that nice makeshift table to display. So what I did, what I found out, if you can see here, NetBeans already knows what's going on. Next int. And that's it. That's the solution because it's looking for an integer, and if you enter A, B, C, or any other string character, the program will terminate. And let's do our opening and closing statements. Telling us that something is wrong. Cannot find symbol variable has next int. I think it will. I think it will find it. It was working last time, and as we saw. Actually, no, it will not find it because we're missing our parentheses. It's looking for this thing right here. Fixed. Okay. While grade equals input dot next int total. We're adding grade to total. Last time we did equals total plus grade. Now we're trying to progress to a point where we're trying to save time and compress our code so that it executes and compiles quicker. So we're going to just do plus equals grade is an equivalent statement. And then we're going to do plus plus grade counter. So we're pre-incrementing the variable grade counter. Previously we did grade counter equals grade counter plus 1. Let's undo all this with Control Z. Okay. Now we're going to call a method to increment the appropriate counter. And we do this by writing the class that did not exist yet, as we saw in gradebook test. This is going to be a little different though. This is going to be increment letter grade counter, parentheses grade, and we've already ended our while. We need to end the method input grades. We've ended it. Okay. And now here we're going to add 1 to the appropriate counter. Public void increment letter grade counter. Integer grade. Now I found out the hard way that if you don't put anything here, or if you put the wrong thing here, then the program will not execute and you'll get syntax errors because it's looking for this variable. And for example, I tried to do double when I was working with the switch statement. I was trying to make it into a program that will display the number of statistically significant variables. I was trying to make the program with a policy analysis twist. The problem with this though is that the switch statement in Java does not work with decimals. It only works with integers. And we'll see here in a minute a few resources at the end of this video to get us on our way to understand Java conventions. So we're going to determine which grade was entered. Seems simple enough. And we're going to do that with a switch. Grade divided by 10. Here's where it gets interesting, especially for me, because I didn't really get this. But think of a literal switchboard. We have to list we can't do inequalities or anything like that. You know, we can't say between 9 and 10 or anything crazy like that. For every case, there has to be a specific declaration. So case 9, case was between 90, case 10, and 100. Then we're going to do pre-increment a count, and then break. Think of a circuit breaker. That's how the program knows to exit that switch. So if the user enters a value that's between 90 and 100, then it gets to this line break and it rinses and repeats over again until the user enters something other than 90, and that's when it gets to case 8. If I can, yep, there you go. About time. I'm not gonna put the between 80 and 90 for now, but everything on down is going to be basically 80 to 89, and then 70 to 79, 60 to 69, and then we're going to have a default, because if it's less than 60, we're just going to say, you know, increment f count. So if it's less than 60, if it's 59 or anything else, that's when we're putting in failure as a grade. So here we're incrementing b count, we're taking a break. Case 7, same thing, between 70 and 79. We're incrementing our C count. Our exit switch, or our exit from the switch. Case 6. Pre-incrementing D count and breaking. And then we do our default here as our default case. We don't have to put anything here. Basically, if it's anything less There's no other cases. It's only between 90. If they enter in 110, it doesn't work. So here we do f count, break, and we're done. We've ended our switch. So let's indicate this and switch. We're not quite done yet though. Let's end this and the increment. Now we have to display our output. We're going to display a report, and we're going to do this with public void display grade report. We're going to do system.out.println for a new line. And let's do \n grade report. And if the user entered at least one grade, we're going to have an if statement. If grade counter does not equal 0, opening and closing brackets, we're going to calculate the average. We don't want to use double, we want to use integer. Or actually, we do want to use that because we have not declared average yet. Let's see. Let's try with a double. Because if we add all of the grades, and if you add 80 and 90 and 70, you are going to have a remainder. It's not going to be unless you're dividing by 10, it's not going to be a clean cut or a clear cut division. So let's do double average. And then if you recall from previous programs we've written, let's do double here to designate total. It's giving us an error. Oh, because we're missing a semicolon. Okay, and let's do system.out.printf total of the %d, that's an integer placeholder, grades entered is %d. The %d might not work. We might have to change it to %.2f for floating point. But for now, let's do this. And actually, I want to add a n, comma, grade counter, total. System.out.printf class average is %. Now we want to use .2f because we've declared average as a decimal, and it needs to have those 2 points of specificity, or those 2 decimal points. And then we want to declare a variable here that we're pulling the information from as average. Alright, I didn't want to type that out because I can't read that and type and talk at the same time. There's no way. I'll just make a ton of mistakes because this is the most fun line in this program. It's nothing but formatting. So it's going to be %s /n, %s, %d, /n, %s, %d. It repeats. It's really the same thing. So I guess I could have just typed in %s and %s, %d, but no matter. Now let's do the information that we're actually going to display. Number of students Number of students who received each grade. You might have noticed I did not put the variable total yet. We will here in a second. Let's see. Comma. A count. No comments for these, they're pretty self-explanatory. B count. C count. Let me just go ahead and copy and paste this over here. Okay, with that out of the way, A count, B count declaration, then we're ending our if statement. Else there was no grade entered, and we need to let the user know that with a system.out.println. Sometimes I hate how he does that, how it just types in parentheses for me, because it throws me off. No grades were entered. That's it. We're ending the method display grade report. We're ending class gradebook. And that should be everything we need. About 108 lines of code, I believe, with comments. And then gradebook test Java, everything looks in order. Let's go through this. And we have our package gradebook test, public class gradebook test, public static void main, our main class declaration with string args. We're creating gradebook object, my gradebook, and we're passing the course name to the constructor. Gradebook, my gradebook equals new gradebook, and we're calling the class, the owner, CS 101 Introduction to Java Programming. Let's delete that and just call it Introduction to Java Programming, my gradebook. And here we're referencing all of our classes that we, the majority of the classes that we use in gradebook.java, such as display message, input grades, and display grade report. So we're displaying the first initial prompt to the user. We're calling the class where we're inputting the grades, and we're receiving the user input from system input. And then we're displaying the report as we format it here. And in this class, we're doing the same thing. We're referencing our package. We're importing scanner. We're declaring a class as public, but our variables is private. We're going to a public gradebook. We're initializing our constructor and using our set and get methods like in episode 2 and 3 with the fuel price calculator. Down here, public void display message. This is the initial prompt. Welcome to gradebook for this. This exclamation mark is going to be added onto this message here. So it's going to be programming with an exclamation mark. Get course name. Then public void input grades. Scanner input equals new scanner. Integer grade, declaring this. Enter the integer grades in the range of 0 to 100. Type any character to end. Then we have our while loop, which this fix should work. If we don't have the int here, a lot of old programs rely on Control Z for Windows and Control D for Linux and I believe Mac operating system to end the program, which in NetBeans and a lot of other development environments, other IDEs, does not work. Here we have grade input as declared as input.next integer, so we're initializing it here. To save us some time, we're doing plus equals grade, which is the equivalent of total plus grade. And then we're pre-incrementing grade counter by 1 each time this while loop executes. We're calling the method to increment the appropriate counter here. And then we're inputting our grades. The switch, that's the majority of our program. This is what makes it work, because it evaluates the user input based on the criteria we've specified. So case 9, 10, 8, 7, and 6. And then it increments the appropriate, think of it as like a waterfall. If it's 9, do this. If it's not, then check this. If that's not it, go to 7. If that's not it, go to 6. And if that's not it, just go to the default and increment our F count. Then we're ending our switch, we're ending our increment, and then we're displaying a report with this fun fun comment here, or fun line here. System.out.println for a new line, grade report, and then if the user entered at least one grade, if they didn't enter one grade and then just exited the program, then we're going to say, no grades have been entered, or grades have been entered with 0, however you decide to write the program. And then we're declaring, I want to see if this works, double average equals double total grade counter, because up here, if I remember right, yeah, total is an integer, which that's why we do this with parentheses, because it's a double only in this instance. It's a double because it's retaining I remember the previous episode that we went over how the program retains the decimals but doesn't display them, and then upon display people might wonder, well, what happened to my decimals, or why is it bigger than we added like 7 and 3 and then the result was 0.1 instead of 0.0 like it should have been, because it retained more information and it rounded up. So here we have our A counts all the way through F. Else display this, basically our catch-all if they didn't enter any grades. Let's run it and see if it works. We're getting an error somewhere. Java.u missing format argument exception, format specifier S. Oh, we're missing one of the format specifiers. That's an easy fix. Alright, I figured it out. I could pretend and say I built this program with the error just to demonstrate what happens if you have too many format placements or format signifiers, but you actually don't use them all. But I'm going to be honest and say that was a whoops on my part. So here we have multiple format placeholders for strings. We have 4 of them. We have %s, that's 1, %s, that's 2, %s, that's 3, and %s, that's 4. And then we do comma, and then we enter in the data to be entered in those placeholders in order. So the first one goes here, the second one goes here, and then it's looking for 2 more, but there's nothing after that. So the fix is really simple. Just delete this. It is a good learning experience. So basically we can't have more string or numerical placeholders in a system.out.printf statement than we actually have data for. So if you only have like 2 variables and it's looking for 4, it doesn't work. So let's run the program again. It's running down here. Let's close it with this X. And then let's rerun it. And then this time it works. So welcome to Gradebook 4, Introduction to Java Programming, with the exclamation mark. Enter the integer grades in the range of 0 to 100. Type any character to end. First of all, I want to check if my character exit works. So we're going to type in E, enter. Grade report, no grades were entered. Works flawlessly. So it recognizes that we have not entered any grades, so it goes to the else statement. And the character exit works. Now let's do it again. If I try to type in Control Z just to show you, and you can try it now, it does nothing. So let's type in a few grades: 23, 50, 47, 90, 32, 78, oh, 778, huh, 87, 77, 10, 0, I guess somebody cheated, and then 63. Then let's do a character. Build successful, total time 34 seconds. Class average is 104. Yeah, that 778 threw it off, but you get the idea. Total, next time we'll probably take a look at how to limit entries. So if they enter an invalid value, so if they enter something like 778, the program will display a code like, you've entered an invalid value, please try again. That way we make it a little more user friendly. But for now we'll stick with this. We entered in 11 grades. The total was 1257. Class average is 114.27. That one guy that just got all the extra credit, I guess he threw the curve. Okay, number of students who received each grade: A1, B1, C1, D1, F7. Alright, as you can see, this one, it threw the average and the sum off, but it did not throw the count off, because the count, let's stop this, the program's been stopped. Alright, the count is between 90 and 100, and that's it. There's no 778 or anything higher than 100. So it's actually somewhat user-friendly because it will not count invalid values in the count. So if all you're looking for is the count and not the average and the total, then yeah, the user can enter invalid values all they want, but the count will remain accurate so long as the values entered are within or match the cases in our switchboard here. Alright, that brings us to the end of this episode. Folks, I strongly recommend you take a look at the Java Conventions PDF in the description, and there's a few other good links as well that deal with end of file indicators. The PDF is not very long. It's from '97, so it's a bit outdated, but it has a lot of good information that's still valid, and it will help us figure out what's what in Java Conventions. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time on our Ecology Designs production. A quick model that I created for the analysis and prediction of coal prices. Welcome back to part 3 of our Stata series tutorials. Arrays, the VLOOKUP function, and other conditional functions.